anything about it.
Where were you taken?
I was drove in a minute and a half in a dark paddy wagon to a prisoner bus, which then was taken to the Eastern Avenue Detention Center.
What time did you get there eventually?
I guess I got there maybe around 1:30.
In the morning?
Yeah.
And what time were you released?
I was released maybe at around 10 o'clock the next night. I was held for 24 hours in handcuffs the whole time.
Oh, the next night?
Oh yeah, the next night. I was held for just before the 24 hours you can legally hold somebody.
Were you fed, given water?
I was held in handcuffs about 8 hours. I was put into a cage that was 10 by 20 with 40 guys. You may have heard them say, these are meant for 10 guys. We understand sometimes there was upwards of 20. I was in there with 40 guys and one 16-year-old kid. They had a 16-year-old kid in there with 39 men for 24 hours. About 8 hours in, we had to start begging for water. You could hear all the other cages yelling for water. We had to start a water.
Very hot day, wasn't it?
Yeah, we had to start a water riot. A lot of these, like I'd been in custody since 10:30, and now it was almost. We were fed about 12 hours in, but again, you had to riot for that as well.
You got these. Riot, what do you mean?
You had to start shaking the cages. Everyone was yelling, "Water, water!" They'd either laugh at you or say they were working on it.
Well, they claim it was very difficult logistically to get water to so many people.
Oh, really? Because when we came in, there was skids upon skids of water bottles, and what we got was a jug of blue water on an office rolly chair with Dixie cups, where they would do a little squirt and hand it out to each prisoner. When there was just skids upon skids of Gatorade and water. Never got an apple or orange. I know that was in the footage. It was freezing cold in there. It was kind of unbelievable. The officer who dropped off the last guy, the 40th guy, said, "How many guys are in here?" And we're like, "There's 40 guys in here." And they're like, "What do they think this is, Auschwitz?"
Anyway, so to proceed now with, I guess, the time spent in the first cell. Me and most of the group, like about another 7 or 8 of us, stayed in that cell for 12 hours. Of course, as the repeated stories, none of us got phone calls, none of us got contact to legal aid, despite asking for it several times. Conditions-wise, it was very psychologically confusing, I guess. The floor was very cold, concrete floor was very cold in the room itself. The bright lights were constantly on. We had no idea what time it was. So it was a very strange atmosphere. We got water after a few hours, but a very small portion. Again, despite asking several times. And food, again, was very scarce, and we had to ask for it several times.
The only thing we really got was a little Dixie cup of water twice a day, and it was lukewarm. We also got a sugar-free little same thing of lukewarm Tang, and we would get 2 sandwiches a day with just a piece of cheese on it. And that's all we got every day. And the lights were on 24 hours, so nobody really got any sleep. The first pen that we were in has an outhouse with no door, and there's 40 people in this little room when there's only supposed to be a maximum of 15.
These cells would have one bench. I know mine was sort of standing room only. You had to take turns if you wanted to sit. In her cell, all the porta potties in there had the doors taken off. And so if a woman had to go to the washroom, all the male officers could watch. So what they would have to do is...
Did they watch?
Yes. So what they did is they formed something called... They would call out wall, and all the women would form a human wall. And because everyone was still handcuffed, they had to help wipe each other. And I eventually, from begging for water, passed out in my cell. I fell over. I don't really know too much what happened. They refused to come in and get me. My cellmates had to drag me to the door. I was apparently given some watered-down juice and put back on a bench, and that's when I remember having the ringing headache. The guard that gave me the juice, my fiancée told me, came over to their cage, broke down and started crying, saying, "I don't know why you guys are in here. This is wrong." And we had similar incidences with 2 officers at ours as well.
So we assumed that we were being released, but they just in fact brought us to another cell. So again, very hard time to get food again in that cell and water. No information whatsoever. Basically the same thing. We had a mate in our cell who was diabetic, and on 2 occasions he wasn't doing well. His blood sugar was low. They took him out and brought him into the infirmary and gave him a couple of insulin shots, I assume, but always brought him back to the cell. And every time they brought him back, within an hour, he was feeling sick. He wasn't feeling well again. And it got to a point where he was feeling so bad that we were trying to get him water, and he was shaking, and he was clearly he was losing color. He was not doing well at all. And we were obviously calling for attention, yelling out at them at this point for quite a while, half an hour, 40 minutes. until he finally collapsed off the bench. At that point, finally they got people and brought him out. And we were yelling at them to actually bring him to the hospital to hospitalize him and not just to get him and throw him back in the cell again. And that's what they did. They took him out for about 10-15 minutes and threw him back in the cell again.
I was inside for about 26 hours, I guess. At the 24th hour, I demanded that I would to be released because that was my rights, and they assured me that my rights didn't apply in that building. And
why? What did they justify?
That's all they said. They're like, sometimes your rights just don't apply here. So I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure they apply everywhere, but if that's what you want to think. So after I was released, they were describing how we would have to go into like a holding cell, and then I mentioned my boyfriend, and he said, oh, you are a part of the gay community, are you not? I'm like, yes. And he's like, well, the people in here don't really take too kind to your type, so I recommend you act straight during your visit here, and once you leave, you can act the way you choose. And then just kept going on. He's like, actually, I'm gonna put you and your boyfriend in a segregated room. And it was just a little stall, like it looked like a dog pen, and there was a whole line of just gay people in these like one person things. There was like a lesbian couple, there was me and my boyfriend, and then there was 2 separate lesbians that were just put there just because they were gay, but they didn't admit that, but they were put there for their own safety. Like, the entire group was not homophobic whatsoever. The only people who were homophobic in that building were the police.
It's just absolutely unbelievable. Like, and obviously, when either some officers on the inside are starting to become sort of a little bit more sadistic or sort of enjoying that controller role, and others are breaking down and going into the I'm just following orders, I'm just a pea in a pod, something is wrong. Like, I'm not anti-protester, I'm not anti-police, I'm pro-truth. One of the things they said, I think Bill Blair said it, is that everyone was recorded from the moment they stepped into that place to the moment they stepped out. And we actually had to read a sign as we were coming in saying, all audio and video of you will be recorded. And there was a camera right above watching us the whole time.
Well, that's standard, though, isn't it?
Yeah. That, and,
for your own protection.
Yeah,
as well.
exactly. And my position right now is release the detention center footage, release the closed-circuit television footage from the streets.
Why would they have to do that?
Why would they have to do that? Well, because what the statements that they said was that these cages are built for 10 people. We understand sometimes they're upwards of 20. They were fed regularly. They were watered regularly. Why not? I wasn't. I was in a cage with 40 guys. I passed out and was denied medical attention. I want people to hear the recording of that Toronto Police Services officer saying, what do they think this is, Auschwitz? And then I want people to say that an inquiry is not required. So whoever was in charge, whoever was calling the shots, failed all those officers and failed all the citizens involved.
Again, those watching, and I know there'll be people watching now who are saying, oh, yeah, it's all one-sided. Imagine if you're from a different political background, you were on a pro-life demonstration, or you were protesting against some left-wing measure, and the police treated you this way. Please don't get the idea that the police are particularly political. I think often the police can be, and they should be, quite robotic. It's the law, and they will enforce the law, and if they're told to go beyond that, they might go beyond that. I know many police officers, they've told me, think the whole thing was a disaster. They're ashamed. They think their reputation has been sullied. This is wrong. This is wrong.
I've always had a positive experience with the police, and suddenly this has completely changed my view on everything.
Benjamin Yao was walking to work. He's a TTC collector and was in his uniform. He says there were no protesters in sight, but police were blocking an intersection, so he started walking the other way.
They basically just knocked me down, and another one came and held me down, and they started handcuffing me. When I was being arrested, I mean, they wanted to know if this was the tool that I was going to use on them.
What is this?
It's a transfer punch.
Benjamin was taken to the Eastern Avenue Detention Center and told he would be charged with resisting arrest and breach of peace.
It was sheer terror. I've never experienced anything like it. I had 4 cups of water in 36 hours. I was crying, but I had no tears. I was so dehydrated. This was a form of martial law as far as I'm concerned.
Our cameras interviewed Benjamin moments after he was released early Monday morning. He had been in custody since Saturday night and had been told all charges against him were dropped.
I can't believe this happened. Like this, I'm just absolutely shocked. I don't know what to say. Don't know what to say at all.